Hello, welcome to my tutorial. In this video I'm going to talk about the use of for loops. Alright, we're not going to do anything interesting, we're just going to look at the syntax of. Ideally, you already know how to use some form of a while loop. That's going to make everything make a lot more sense. But if you just want to start out with for loops, you can try, but I wouldn't expect it to go that well. So I've got my form here. I've got a list box called list print, button called button print. I'm going to double click on button print, jump over to code design, and the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a while loop. And I think the best way to talk about what a for loop is by contrasting it with a while loop. So if we're using a while loop, we actually have to create a counter. So dim I as integer, and we need to give it a starting value. Let's say we want to print out the numbers between 10 and 20. Okay, arbitrary. That means I want to start at 10. And I want to do this while I is less than or equal to 20. Alright, so I'm going fast at this point because I'm assuming you've already seen some videos on while loops. So start at 10, count to 20, and I want to count by ones. So I plus equals 1. So this means each time we get to this point, add 1 to our I, and I want to display the contents to that list box. So listbox.items.add, and I want to add I itself. So I'm starting at 10, counting to 20, and I'm counting by 1. So when I go to run this thing and print, I get 10 through 20. Sounds good. Alright, notice it's quite a bit different than the other examples I've done. So I don't want to do a do while loop. Let's say I want to solve this problem using a for loop. So I like to contrast these. The difference is we're still going to have the idea of a counter, a starting value, and a finishing value, but we don't declare the variable explicitly. That's really the big difference here. So I'm going to do a keyword for, and so now I need to give my counter a name. I'm still going to go with j because I've already used I. So for j as integer. All right, so I just declared my variable. Equals, let's say 1 to 10. All right, that's my syntax. So let's look at what I did. So in a while loop, this block, 5 through 10, I had to create my variable, initialize my variable, and increment my variable. In a for loop, I'm creating my variable on the fly, initializing it on the fly, and I'm setting up the condition on the fly, and my incrementation is implicit. Alright, so I'm not going to go in here and write something like j equals j plus 1 because it's automatically going to add 1. Let me hack this, I'll comment this guy out so you can just look at it. And I want this thing to go list print dot items dot add, and I want to add j because it's the name of my variable. Now let's run this. I'm telling you it's probably going to print out between 1 and 10. So F5 to run. And it prints out the numbers between 1 and 10. Notice it does the same thing that I could do with a while or an until loop. Instead of explicitly creating my variable, I'm just creating it on the fly. The really interesting thing, and I say this a little more foolproof, it's a little bit harder to create an infinite loop because it's going to increment. Most of the times when your while loops go bad, it's because of this, flawed line 9. And so here's an interesting one. Let's say I want to print out the odd numbers between 1 and 100. Alright, so if I want to go to 100, then I'm going to change this to 100. And so, if you remember how I did this before, I counted by 2's basically. So if I want to count by something other than 1, then I say step. And so by default, it's just step 1. That means count by 1's. If I want to count by 2's, then I say step 2. And now I'm going to be, that's the equivalent of writing j equals j plus 2. Now if I run this thing, you can see that I'm counting by 2's. It's not uncommon to want to go backwards through some data. Right? So if I wanted to go backwards, I'd probably say from 100 to 1. And my step value, if I wanted to go backwards, is going to be -1. Well, let's see how this works. I print, and you can see what's happening. In this way, I mean, you can see why people would like this because it's a little more foolproof. You're not going to set up as many infinite loops doing this. but you also have to understand the syntax. Probably not a great idea to go to this before you understand this, because this just kind of looks like a bunch of magical words strung together. The biggest strength of this is that whether you are writing Visual Basic, Java, some form of C, for loops, the syntax is always similar. So while it looks intimidating to someone who's just starting out, you really only have to learn it one time, and the rest of the differences are going to be small. So that's for loops. I hope to make another video soon. We'll see how time goes. Thanks for watching.